All right, so I've been like noticing some things recently, and basically just how closely um, certain things that are coming out about these trafficking rings, how they relate to the mafia. Now, I'm going to say our idea of the mafia is very much um, influenced by the movies we watch, the shows we watch, and our idea of the mafia is more along the lines of, there's a lot of violence, but what we don't see is we don't see sexual violence. Now, does that mean that in real mafia that doesn't actually exist? Or does that mean we're just not being shown it? Because another thing I'm seeing a connection with is going to be, when we're listening to some of the testimony being given, especially testimony from Sasha Riley, is there's a relation to gladiators, right? Gladiator games. So, some of the things that he described happening to him sounded very much like that's what it was. Now, if we look at the movies that we have about gladiators, there's lots of violence, there's a lot of killing, but do we see sexual violence? No, we don't. That part is left out as if it didn't exist. But in reality, I'm pretty sure that that's what was happening. So I'm not going to say 100% that's what's happening with the mafia, but one could very much imagine, especially with this testimony sounding so much like mafia, one could imagine that that is part of it, right? Now, if we're comparing what they're talking about to mafia, and specifically the trafficking ring that our sitting president is most implicated in, which is going to be the Sasha Riley ring, the one he's describing. What I am hearing constantly with that is this sounds like mafia activity. Now I'm going to take that a step further. What kind of thing do mafias often do to kind of make sure that new people that are introduced to the mafia or come in contact with it or will be dealing with them or whatever, and this part is shown in the movies, what kind of things do they do? Well, very often they're going to make sure that new member or the person they're going to be dealing with is going to be somehow pushed into committing some kind of crime, right? They have to be feel like they're part of whatever's going on, right? They participated, and since they participated somehow, maybe they were pushed into killing someone or pushed into some kind of sexual violence. And then psychologically, that person would feel like, okay, now they're a criminal too. Now, if they tell on anyone in that network and try to expose them, try to be a whistleblower, then they would have to tell on themselves too. And when I'm listening to Sasha Riley, that's what I'm hearing him saying. Because he's saying that he was given this impression that, anyone that is exposed to this ring, whether they came in as a child and they're trafficked like he was, would be forced to do things. And he was speaking from his own experience mostly with it. Like he described multiple instances where he was forced to have intercourse with other children that were with other children around his age. I believe he was 12 at the time, or most of what he's talking about, he was 12. But he was forced into those situations, and he honestly felt like he was gonna die in many. Would this be the time that they killed him? Because they would kill these kids in front of his eyes. They were making snuff films. So how he describes it is that he had the impression that someday there would come a point maybe that people who were being abused like he was and trafficked might become members, right? They might be the one on the other side of that. And his impression of that was just based on seeing all the people that came to the parties. And he was describing just basically, senators and judges in high places, and, mentioning their names too. And he describes an event where somebody who is now a senator forcefully raped him in front of an audience. So his idea of it was that everyone that was involved in this, it's quite possible that they got involved in it when they were young. Because the senator, when this happened, they were young at the time. So this kind of goes along with my idea of mafia, that if anyone is going to be part of that mafia, they have to be a part of killing people. They have to be a part of doing the illicit activities, because then they would feel like they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't tell anyone about it because they'd be telling on themselves. But if that's the case, how did Sasha Riley tell on himself? Because he's mentioning instances of him having forced sex with other children while he was a child. And he's mentioning his experience with actually pulling the trigger. How is he talking? But we're not condemning him. And if that's the case, there is something psychological where people can get out of a situation like this, where they're forced under threat of losing their own lives, really, from a young age, to get into something like this. And if we have people, which, based on everything I've heard so far, it feels like that's what's happening. If we have people in our power structure that have gone through this mafia type of initiation, why can't they come forward the same way as Sasha Riley and say, this is what happened to me, and this is how I got into it? They should be able to.